Good afternoon. We are here at the Community Wise podcast. This is our August podcast, and we welcome our listeners, we welcome our guests. Today, we're going to talk about a very interesting um, topic in Kansas City regional area, which would be affordable housing. And we have a solution to the problem. And we have a few special guests with us, and we'll go from the mayor's office, we have Miss Melesa Johnson. From MARC, Mid America Regional Council, we have Lauren Palmer. From the Kansas City Housing Authority, we have Ed Lowndes. And from LISC Kansas City, we have Ben Payton. Welcome, everyone.
Hi.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Holly. It's
having
great
us.
to be here.
So
Hello.
I did a
Hello.
little, hello. I did a little research, right? So families with children typically cannot afford housing in good neighborhoods or jobs. What in the world? In 2021, we're still experiencing this. And in addition, I've found through some research, households are typically housing burdened because they have less money for groceries, transportation, childcare, and healthcare. What are we doing wrong in this world? And that's the question I'll open up to all of you. And then I want to talk about the solution to this problem. So I'm just going to do a piggyback and do round robin. So I'm going to start with Ed. Do you
Sure.
mind?
No, not at all. Typically, housing costs, the standard would be 30% of your take-home income of a month should go to your housing costs. And that's whatever you're paying for your rents or your mortgage plus your utilities. But housing costs and utilities have been skyrocketing while incomes have been stagnant. That's problem number one. The other problem that we see, particularly in the affordable housing world, is since the 2007 2008 housing bubble, a lot more people are foregoing buying housing and they're renting. So you have higher income individuals now in the rental market that are causing, it's enabling landlords to charge more, which is blocking out those lower income or middle income families from being able to afford the rent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Lauren, what are you thinking?
Well, you asked what are we doing wrong, and Ed works with the housing authority, and unless you're a community that has a housing authority embedded in your local government, housing isn't really a sweet spot of municipal services. I think historically, cities and counties are great at delivering streets and sewers and parks and recreational amenities, and we're great at being responsive to applications from developers for residential and commercial projects, but it's kind of new territory to ask your city government to think about really being strategic and proactive on creating the kind of housing in the community that best serves the needs of the city. That's always kind of, maybe not always, but historically, traditionally been kind of a private sector role. We let the market respond, and cities are kind of just doing that regulatory development process. So we're seeing more pressure on a housing market, and I think communities are starting to realize now this is bigger than just a, a social service issue. Not that that's not important and relevant, but starting to understand the important connections that housing has to workforce, to economic development. Making sure that our communities can run across the broad spectrum of all the bits and pieces that go into our economic engine, and really challenging our municipal and civic systems to think about how we can do more to have housing in place that meets our community needs.
That's a great segue into the city. Melissa, what are
Yes.
you thinking?
Well, Lauren hit the nail on the head. Depending on which mayor or city you ask, there are differing opinions as to how involved municipal government should be in establishing, maintaining, and increasing the inventory of affordable housing. I think Mayor Quentin Lucas has made himself pretty clear that he is assuming this responsibility on behalf of the city, whether that be through allowing people that experiencing homelessness to reside on the front lawn of City Hall for 6 months, or placing them in hotels, or really focusing on cracking down on unnecessary incentives for projects that are not erecting affordable housing. One thing that our office is also looking at is the inventory issue. In about 2016, there was a $10 million project approved by City Council to demolish a lot of dangerous structures that were persisting in the city that were uninhabitable. That was great. It made space for new development, but that new development never happened. There was no reinvestment to put that inventory back on the market. And so when you're dealing with a limited number of homes in the first place, naturally you're going to deal with a limited number of affordable units as well. And so that is one thing that we have been focusing on, is trying to find ways to right that wrong of 2016 by demolishing all of these homes, but not having an answer as how to restock the inventory for the city.
Okay, so what is the answer? Ben, what's the answer to this solution?
Well,
What,
go ahead,
Ben.
Ed. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one of the solutions, and picking up right where Melesa was talking about, it was an example, was we tore down our Shoto Courts public housing site, which was 134 units, and we're in our last phase of replacing that, but you're replacing them in mixed income, mixed finance developments, which we did 7, and instead of the 134 replacing, we'll have over 500 units between all of them, because you're doing it in a way with private development, federal investment, city investment. But it starts with that concept of, and a focus on, we will do affordable housing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ben?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I think, what I think we'll talk about this eventually, but the Road Forward initiative, I believe, is one solution that we're seeing, that we've been put forward here to help address this. It isn't going to be the silver bullet that solves it all over the place for everyone, but I think it's a good step in the right direction. I think what makes it particularly interesting for me and at LISC is that it really truly is a program gauged for creating more housing opportunities for families with children. I think what we're seeing a lot in the market right now is senior housing is, we don't lack the development of senior housing. What we lack right now is new affordable quality of housing for families that have children that are also near good quality jobs and good schools. And I think that's what the Road Forward initiative is, kind of well positioned to do here. And so, I'm that's what I'm, particularly excited about the program.
So the Road Forward, and that stands for Regional Opportunity Area Development Finance Initiative. So that means what? We are going to provide more affordable housing for families and their children, correct? So, as a mom of 2 small children, or 2 kids, and I'll just be very honest with you, my husband and I have been very fortunate to have the jobs that we do. Unfortunately, where our neighborhood is in Lee Summit, nice neighborhood, but then if you go a little bit on the other side of where Raylan's school is, and she goes to Underwood Elementary, so on Colburn, there's a housing area of a bunch of apartments, and there's a lot of parents in our school district. I will say, to be very honest, they don't look like me, and they want that school to be zoned, or to be rezoned, so that apartment complex wouldn't be included in our kids' school. I'm like, are you serious? Like, I can't even imagine what in your mind would make you feel that way. And so what we are doing with this project, the Road Forward, is making integrations in not only in our housing market, but also in our social economic areas, as well as our cultural and racial inequalities that are starting to, as we know, I mean, I will say post George Floyd, are very, very in your face right now. So, talk to me a little bit about the road forward, and what specifically do people need to know from the community aspect, need to know about this? Anybody?
Well, I'll start off, and you touched on it, Holly, about it's really about an opportunity for mobility. When I look at our wait list, it is predominantly minorities, and when they are issued a housing choice voucher, a lot of our families, they'll gravitate or go to the central part or urban core of the city because that's where the majority of the affordable housing is located. The road forward is an opportunity for us to use the federal assistance vouchers that we have, partnering with Lee Summit, the Lee Summit Housing Authority, the Kansas City, Missouri, to work with the developers that will go into those non-impacted neighborhoods to intentionally construct affordable housing, but use our assistance for those families that need the housing assistance. So you have a combination of quality housing, good neighborhoods, and opportunity for individuals that would not ordinarily think to go to those areas, so that you are investing in equality and inclusion.
Ah, I love it. So tell me this: what's the draw? Like, what would be the downside of from a developer's aspect? Like, why aren't developers already intentionally doing this?
I think the aspect of it is, from the developers, it's really an economic aspect. Ordinarily, developers can't today, particularly after the pandemic and the cost of everything, saying we can't develop that kind of housing, by ourselves. They need the public investment. The public investment can come traditionally from the city through its CDBG funds or other funding sources. But this is an opportunity to tie a 20-year contract to that development that is paying the rent on behalf of the tenant directly to the landlord, so that they have guaranteed income. It's an income source they can literally take to their bank and say, the risk of rental is greatly reduced because I have this contract that says the housing authority will pay the rent for this percentage of my units. So now it becomes affordable. And that's what we want on the road forward, is get those developers to see this is an opportunity that is financially feasible and in the best interest of our communities.
And yeah, and just to echo what I was saying, in addition to that, while we were creating the program, when it was going through its early phases, we were really cognizant that we wanted the Missouri Housing Development Corporation to be a partner, or at least a champion for the program. Let's call it that. And so we've been able to work with MHDC, and we're going to be providing these for programs that or for projects that we believe are good fits to the program. We're going to be offering letters of support to them that they can take to MHDC, and those letters will hopefully give greater weight to those projects, right? And that MHDC will look favorably upon those and say, hey, this program, the Road Forward Initiative, which is already a combination of multiple entities in the Kansas City region, they believe this is a good fit. We should take that into consideration when we're making our final decision. So.
And that both of those points are really awesome, because something that we are concerned about from the city's perspective is income discrimination. And so which is an equity issue in and of itself. So by stepping up and communicating with the banks and being very forward about, hey, our subsidies will make you whole, helps families and individuals that do have vouchers are looking for subsidies to still get the same type of housing opportunities as individuals that don't use those same kind of subsidies. Unfortunately, we haven't been successful yet in passing an ordinance or other form of legislation that directly outlaws or bans income discrimination, but it is definitely something on the mayor's administration's radar and something that we will continue to pursue and try to bring about for the city.
Mm-hmm.
And Holly, you mentioned just that issue of community stigma around affordable housing, and that is real. In 2019, MARC, through our First Suburbs Coalition, did a project with the National League of Cities for a regional housing study and summit. And as part of that project, we surveyed local officials in our region, city staff and city elected officials. And that survey revealed that one of the top two reasons that they indicated for barriers to affordable housing was concerns about negative impacts on community character. And it was high. I mean, it was like almost 90% of respondents, I think. So what's great about the Road Forward program, it's very focused on serving a high need in the community, focused on families. And it's really got an emphasis on quality. We talk a lot about affordability, but that term can be narrow in describing the complexity of needs around housing. Yeah, and everybody's heads are nodding. So really, the more that we can do projects that demonstrate we can have housing that's affordable and meets community needs and also meets a standard of decency that we would all expect for ourselves and our families and our loved ones. And you know, that's compatible with the community character and that we can all feel comfortable with and embrace in our neighborhoods.
Yeah. And I'll say this from my perspective as a complete person who has no idea about, I have a little bit of knowledge of the housing industry just because of my previous job, but not a lot to be even sitting on a panel with you all. But I will say, if people are really honest with themselves, if you're really, really honest, even if you can't afford a really nice neighborhood, X, Y, and Z, let's be honest, no one really wants to pay that mortgage. I mean, that could go into your kids' college fund or whatever they decide to do. That could go into your retirement fund. But we all have kind of fallen into this thing. And Ed, you talked about it. Why housing is so crazy right now is because that housing crash of 2008, where we all have fallen prey to this. Oh, I have to be in this neighborhood. I have to pay this amount of money for this job, for this house, and you essentially could be house poor. Like, even people with a high income bracket, like it's still a fundamental issue. So I think it's affordable housing for sure, but it's housing in general that needs to be shifted and shaken up and adjusted for all of us. I think, but
No, I agree, and I kind of piggybacking on some of the other comments is the stereotyping. That is one of our biggest barriers. Of the and it'll go, we don't want those people, and then they'll start defining who those people are. But from our perspective, and I think what the Road Forward does, it recognizes that the foundation of quality housing is the foundation for successful communities and the success of those individual families. And so this is providing an opportunity for families who may have had issues in the past to have stable quality housing. And I think study after study after study shows that when you have quality housing, the families are successful. That if you relegate folks to say this is this is what you deserve, then they won't rise to the occasion. If you say this is the level that you deserve and it's quality, then those not only the the parents, but then the children too, they become successful. They do better in school. They're more ambitious as far as what they can do with their lives. And we see that time and time. And the Road Forward is another opportunity to bring those a variety of not only just housing opportunities, but employment opportunities to the families that participate in this.
And I was going to ask about I saw the statistic about most people are let me get my paraphrase correct. A lot of jobs are not located, or people take jobs that are not located in their home, around their homes, because of the location of their homes. And I was thinking, I'm like, that's actually true. Because a lot of people I know who, from different walks of life, they literally have to drive down 70 or, 435 going to Kansas to get to their jobs versus having something literally around the corner. Why is that? I know that's a really.
Some of that is, yeah, some of it is a change in urban planning and urban thought, that you had your housing nodes and then you had your employment nodes, and we moved away from the live work communities. That is make that urban renewal thought is coming back, but it's kind of in reverse, where it used to be you bring the employment to where the housing was. Now we're bringing the housing to where the employment centers are. A great example of that is housing opportunities in and around the new Cerner campus down off Bannister. Well, if you don't create the housing there, then individuals working at that campus, no matter where they are, whether they're the executive or the custodian, will have to travel 30 or 40 minutes a day or more just to get to their employment. This is an opportunity to have that affordable housing right there, so it's easily accessible.
So with the road forward, from what I my research, it says that it will have different development sites around the whole region. So it doesn't matter if it's at Least Summit or South Kansas City or X, Y, and Z. And we all know the benefit of that. But for the sake of our listeners, can we reiterate your thoughts about building a community, building inclusiveness, building, whatever that may look like for all of us going forward?
My primary background is in the public safety space. And so when we think about predictors of crime, and I kind of live my life in the third district here in Kansas City, but when we're thinking about predictors of crime, people that are content with their quality of life are far less likely to commit crime. And in a city that is still experiencing record high homicide and violent crime rates, we want to be strategic about facilitating a city that gives people ease, that provides ease for residents of all walks of life. I know that we've previously kind of thrown around the word affordable, and Ed, you are absolutely correct that that's 30% of a family's income should be spent on living expenses. But just to kind of further put that in perspective, 70% of the AMI here in Kansas City is about $60,620 a year. So 30% of that for a household of four is about $1,515 a month on housing. And that's considered affordable. But what's considered extremely affordable, and that's a family household at about 30% of the AMI, that's $25,980 a year. So affordable housing for them would be $650 a month for a family of four. I am hard pressed to identify very many housing opportunities that would fit or suit families that foot that bill. And so the need is definitely there. And so if we want to talk about looking at reducing crime and making the city a better place from a holistic perspective, housing is probably at the top of the list of ways we can really make people's quality of life better and make them a lot less likely to commit crime.
Mm, wow.
And I think too, to your point, Holly, about it's not just focusing on one particular neighborhood. It is open to any neighborhood. It's not this was designed in a way to expand affordable housing, not to have people move out of neighborhoods to other neighborhoods, but to expand opportunities. The go back, the underlying piece that we're offering is called a housing choice voucher. And we want to expand choice for those very low income families that otherwise don't see that they have a choice. And that alone helps them when they have that choice in housing. They also can make quality choices of other aspects, their choice in school, their choice in employment, their choice around the point. And then that in turn to Melesa's point, is then you also have safer neighborhoods because you're investing, whether you're a renter or a homeowner, you are investing in your neighborhood.
So, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that hearing our conversation, I'm hard pressed to think of another public policy issue that is complex and difficult to solve as housing, and yet ultimately the solutions are going to come at the local level and even more at the neighborhood level. So we've got a problem here that's, I work for a regional council, so we've got a problem here that's bigger than any one jurisdiction in our region. And really it's even bigger than our 9-county region. But ultimately, solutions to solve problems for families and individuals are going to come at a development level within neighborhoods. So a program like the Road Forward that's allowing some pilot projects of developments to happen at sites around the region is a great way to try some models and see what's effective and see what challenges developers are facing and help them to overcome those challenges. The work that MARC is doing in partnership with LISC and others, we're kind of trying to figure out how we can make connections across jurisdictions, across neighborhoods, to try to build a more effective regional housing system so that we've got elements and supports in place to make sure that that work that's happening at the neighborhood level is successful. And I think the Road Forward is just a great example of a model of how that can work.
So, as Ben had mentioned earlier, he says that, or if I remember correctly, you said that this is one part of the solution. It's not going to solve all of our housing needs. So, in our closing of our conversation and our time together, if I could ask you all to be idealistic with me for one moment, and in your perfect world, what would the ultimate answer to our solution other than affordable housing, what does that look like 20 years from now? And also to answer that question, and then any closing points you want to hit home before we wrap up. So what does housing look like in 20 years from now in your mind?
Um, I don't mind. I don't mind starting. I am very intrigued by the community land trust model, one that is similarly happening in Marlboro, for example, where the individuals in the neighborhood get to say on who gets to move in, but not in a discriminatory way, but somebody that has a history with the neighborhood, somebody's family that has a history with the neighborhood, and that would otherwise be displaced by gentrification if it were not for the community land trust model stepping in and ensuring that people that are residing in these neighborhoods are the same people that have generations long history with these particular neighborhoods. And so I would like us generally to just get more thoughtful about placement, about displacement, because that's how gentrification has become so rampant. So I want more community conversations and thoughtfulness with regards to housing and deciding which families get to live where, because typically the families that are the most socially and economically disadvantaged are the ones that get displaced, which I would like to see stop and cease.
There's a lot of statistics that we track around the region that I'm sorry, I don't have the specifics to really cite here today, but that tell us within our region, your life expectancy, your potential for success, your access to economic prosperity is statistically impacted by where you live. And so I think in the future, success looks like erasing that disparity. And for me, I think that's going to come at least in part from building what we've been talking about, sustainable neighborhoods where you've got access to jobs, to transportation, to amenities in a way that's supporting our families and individuals and helping them be successful in life in all the ways that Ed very well articulated, and then understanding just the power that has for building our communities and our economy.
Mhm. Ben or Ed?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at this as well. So I think, well, first of all, Holly, I'm going to answer your question, but I want to put an addendum on this, on the conversation earlier. You know, the Road Forward initiative. This is the first year. This is the first time we're doing this. The goal is that this is a rolling, ongoing process. This isn't a one-off, one-year thing. It's the idea that we're gonna pilot it this year, and then learn and continue iterating and continue doing it down the road. But I think what people should also keep in mind is that we're not reinventing the wheel here. This is similar things have been done in other cities around the country that are similar in areas that are similar to Kansas City, and they've seen success with this type of program. So, I think that should give people, faith in the ability of this program to be successful in the long run. Um, you know, and I think we have a good team, and I think we have a good buy-in of different groups from around the region to make that successful. Uh, so I guess then to kind of tie into your question, your final question here, what is a success like in the future? I mean, I'm not going to pretend to know what it is to be honest, but I think it is going to be something similar that we see where it's kind of diffusing housing so that it's no longer centrally or not all located in one spot. Kind of like to Ed's point earlier, where the older model was to sort of kind of group housing all in one place. I think we're going to see it. I think we want to see it more spread out across different communities, different neighborhoods, in geographic areas. And I think to Lauren's point earlier, the solution is going to probably be on a more local basis, and it's and maybe that's a little bit harder because you're gonna be running up to these long held opinions and feelings that these localities have. But eventually, I think at the end of the day, that's where the most um, work is going to be needed and where the most good is going to be done. So that's my feeling.
I think when I look into that magic crystal ball, and if we're going to be successful at this, we're going to look at it beyond housing. That's just step one. Kansas City has a tremendous wealth of philanthropic entities and social service entities, and when we're dealing with working with the families that we work with, their average income is less than right around $12,000 a year. So, but if you pair the housing, quality housing, with quality social services, you bring the school districts in, and that's plural. We have a tendency to focus in on one, but it's all the school districts in, and the employers into the mix of helping those that need the help, those that are in the most need of affordable housing, and you're creating that atmosphere of treating and addressing all their needs, not holistically. Then I think we will be successful. And to Ben's point, this is not reinventing the wheel. The wheel has been there. It's just that we've forgotten the number of spokes in that wheel, and we're putting them back in, saying in order, that individual is. I'm using my analogies now. That individual is that little hub in between, and if you don't have all the spokes, it falls apart. So we're putting all those pieces back together, but the core of that is quality housing. And that's where the road forward is bringing those private developers into the housing aspect, looking at opportunity across the board so that the families can be successful.
Wow. Well, I thank you all for this time. You have honestly have given me a breath of fresh air and a glimmer of hope for our world, because I think it translates, like everyone has reiterated here, it translates beyond housing. It goes into inequities in life and inclusion in life, and celebrating our differences and learning from each other. And what better way to do that is if your neighbors are different from you? What better way to learn tolerance if you can grow up as a kid in a multicultural neighborhood and just for those kids that are going to benefit from this, I thank you all for your work that you have done on behalf of your organizations. But most importantly, I thank you all on behalf of all the citizens of this region for thinking of us, regardless of income, regardless of racial background. Um, Thank you for being our champions, and we appreciate your time today.
Yep. Holly,
Thank
one
you.
last
Oh,
one
go.
last thing.
Yeah, man.
Uh,
Take it home.
you told me I had to do this earlier. So for developers and people who are interested in more information about the program, the Road Forward Initiative, we're going to be doing a Zoom informational webinar on August 31st. It's going to be virtual. It's going to be online. It's going to be at 4 p.m. We're going to be putting the link to the Zoom room and chat or webinar on our website at our Greater Kansas City LISC website, and we'll also be shooting out an email to people as well who have expressed interest in the program already. So more to come, and that webinar will have more information on sort of the nitty gritty of how the program is going to work. So just got to plug that.
Thank you. Well, cheers to the road forward. Let's go forward.
All right.
Definitely.
That's right.
Thanks,
Thank
Holly.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.